Hi everyone, my name is Claire Hager and I am the data analyst working on the project to prepare for the upcoming flu season. So influenza is a seasonal acute respiratory infection that has inflicted the population around the world, and the populations that suffer the most severe impacts from the flu are vulnerable populations, and they are most likely to end up in the hospital. According to the CDC, the vulnerable population includes adults over the age of 65 years old, children under 5 years old, and pregnant women, as well as those with underlying health conditions such as cancer, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, etc. The United States has an influenza season where more people than usual suffer from the flu, which is the motivation behind this project. There have been over 632,000 deaths in the US between 2009 and 2017, which is only an 8-year span, and the average deaths per year is just over 70,000 deaths. And so now looking at this bar chart, we can see that of the past 5 years, four of them have the highest amount of deaths per year over that 8-year time period, those being in 2017, 2015, 2014, 2013. So hospital and clinics need additional staff to adequately treat these extra patients during the influenza season. So our analysis will assist a medical staffing agency that provides temporary workers to clinics and hospitals as an as-needed basis to plan for the influenza season, a time when additional staff are in high demand. First, we're going to look at the vulnerable population across the nation, and then examine the trends in influenza and how they can proactively plan for staffing needs across the country. First, we're going to examine the vulnerable population group, which again we're going to start with the adults over the age of 65 to discover if there's a correlation between age and an increase in deaths. Moving forward to our population analysis. The first pie chart here in the top left corner shows that adults 65 plus years old make up more than half of the deaths caused by influenza between the time period of 2009 to 2017. And they are most likely to develop flu complications requiring additional care, and they suffer the highest risk of death. In the correlation chart on the right side of the dashboard, we are looking at the correlation between state population and the total number of deaths. And from this, we can see that there is a strong correlation. The larger circles on the chart represent higher populations, and the darker colors represent more deaths. So as we can see, as the population increases, the total number of deaths increases. So the correlation between total population and total deaths is strong. Moving down to the bottom tree map, we are again looking at the number of total deaths and the total deaths of adults over the age of 65, but this time we are looking at them by state. So the size of the box is determined by the number of deaths 65 plus years old, which is also the bottom number in each box. And then the top number in each box and the color of the box is representative of the sum of the total deaths in each state. We can see once again that the vulnerable population makes up most of the deaths in each state. And this means we need to narrow our focus on this population. And we can begin to see here which states have the highest number of deaths. California in this one, California in the line chart at the top. And these are the states we verified are the most vulnerable in the next portion of our analysis. Looking at the map of the United States, we are taking a look at the total population over 65 years old and the number of deaths in this population. The darkest state, once again, California, represents the highest population of 65 years old and older, and the darkest and largest circles representing the highest number of deaths 65 years plus. The states with the highest population of vulnerable patients have the highest number of influenza deaths, showing again that there is a high correlation between flu deaths and the vulnerable patient population. And we can change the slider here on the right side of the page to see, to narrow in on those states with higher average deaths per year. So from this, we have determined that the states with the highest amount of deaths are California, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Florida. So we are going to hone in on these 5 states, and they're going to be the focus of our next analysis, which is when influenza spikes each year. So the chart on the bottom reveals the trend of influenza spikes over the specified time period, again, in those states with the highest number of deaths in the vulnerable population. We can see on this graph that the deaths spike in the fall and then fall again in the spring, with the spike reaching its max in January of each year. So the flu season lasts from fall to spring, reaching its peak in January, and this is going to be the time period that'll be most important for us to have adequate staff on site to treat the influenza patients. Moving on to our conclusion and recommendations. In conclusion, we'll review our key findings, which is that adults over the age of 65 are the most vulnerable. The states that have the highest influenza deaths in the US are California, New York, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Florida, and they are considered in high need of additional staff. And lastly, second to last, flu season starts in the fall and ends in the spring with the highest spike in January. And in addition, the forecast shown in the line chart on the left shows that the next influenza season is going to remain consistent. This is our forecast area in the shaded boxes for each of those top 5 states. With this information, we can make our first recommendations to the hospital staffing agencies. First of all, the states with the highest demand for additional medical staff are the states with the highest population of vulnerable patients, and medical staff will be allocated to these states first. The additional staff should also be sent ahead of January in early fall, so that way they are prepared for the influx of patients at the beginning of fall and those patients with more critical needs. Our next step in our analysis is to look at the other members of the overall vulnerable population, including those children under 5, pregnant women, those with underlying medical conditions, so we can allocate staff to the states with medium needs. Thank you. Please let me know if you have any questions.